Omeda and Predecessor is community first development. What does that really mean?
We basically speak to our players every single day, asking like, what are the things that they think we could improve? What are the ideas that they have?
Been like, from an emotional side, watch people play the game you helped build.
To look at a stadium and be like, more people are playing Predecessor than are in this stadium, that was like a really crazy moment for us.
You raised over 22 million USD and counting. What were the key lessons raising that amount of money?
We had invested so much time and energy and effort into building the game already that when we were going to pitch people, one of the things that our investors said, everyone else has a debt, but you have a game.
One belief that you've completely changed your mind on since founding the business?
I thought making games was easy, but it's definitely way harder than I thought. That's definitely one belief.
Robbie, welcome to the Pixel Perspective. It's good to have you here.
Hey Selim, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
We've known each other coming up to 4 years now, right?
Yeah. Wow. That feels like, wow. So when you say it like that, it feels like a very long time.
It was the first year when I started games recruitment with my first business, and I reached out to Simon, and that's when you folks were over at Gamescom, and the rest is history, essentially. I'd like to just give people a bit of an overview and a background to yourself, and then of course you can introduce yourself as well, and then we'll dive straight into it. I've always been intrigued with your background and what you've achieved with the studio, coming from a content creator background, focusing on YouTube and Twitch, to then building a Discord community, which has flown, I don't know the exact numbers right now, but it was at 42,000 members, to co-founding Omeda in 2020 and raising a ton of money in this day and age, which was over 22 million and continuing to count, receiving epic mega grants to then launch Predecessor, which I had the privilege of seeing at Gamescom last year on launch night, and not to forget to mention being featured on Forbes. So once again, look, welcome, and I'm really keen to get started. A couple of the topics that I want to essentially go through today is the evolution of Predecessor, you, and the studio. And I think it will be an interesting topic to discuss VC-backed game studio models, making right hires, what sort of decisions were made under pressure, and a studio culture that's growing at pace, and of course the realities of running a game company. And we'll wrap it up with the road ahead for what is next for Omeda, really. So over to you. Bit of an introduction on yourself, man.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for the wonderful intro. I think you're doing it better than I can. But I guess, as you mentioned, I started out as a content creator. That was something I was really passionate about. I started doing that at university. Really fell in love with content creation at that time, and then I fell in love with a game which was called Paragon, which is a MOBA being made by Epic Games. And I was always really a MOBA player at heart. League of Legends, Dota, more so League of Legends. And then when I saw Paragon, I was like, wow, this is like the next generation MOBA. It was third person. It was very unique. And so I spent a lot of my time creating content about Paragon. And then two years later, Epic Games come out with Fortnite, and this thing takes over the world, and they decide to close everything else. And I mean, clearly the right decision now, right? Like, Fortnite is just still a global phenomenon. But they closed everything else, and I saw this really strong, passionate community that really loved what Paragon and the vision they had and what they were trying to achieve. And so I met my two co-founders on Twitch, and we had the shared belief of, we think there's something really special here in building a third-person MOBA. So why don't we try to make a third-person MOBA, but really build it alongside the community that we had created through our platforms? And then Epic Games also decided to release the IP for Paragon, which is unheard of, but I think is something incredible that they've done to really help grow the community. And so that really encouraged us that, you know, we can focus on building a really great game, utilizing some of those assets to give us a head start. And so we did that for about 2 years, from 2018 to 2020, had about 100,000 people sign up. and we were just kind of blown away by the response. And it was mostly because we were streaming development on YouTube and then Twitch and really engaging with the community. And then Epic Games noticed, they gave us a mega grant. We raised some venture capital of about 2.2 million. I think that's around the time when we kind of got introduced, because we had brought on Simon on board and then went to our first Gamescom. And since then, we've raised a bunch more capital and then also developed the game and finally released the game at Gamescom as you were there, and kind of gone through the ups and downs of building a studio and a lot of learnings. As I mentioned, I was at university when I started basically the start of this journey. So it's been a lot of learnings. I didn't have any industry experience, but since then we've hired some really great people that like Mags, Ben, who have got a ton of industry experience and really helped us. So yeah, that's kind of a quick intro, or a long, but hopefully a quick intro.
You see, when Epic essentially shelved Paragon, you were completely passionate about this. Was that sort of light bulb moment when they released the assets? You said, we can actually do this now. We can utilize it. Was that the moment and the passion for creating the company come?
Yeah, it definitely was. So I definitely have to give credit to Epic, because I think they definitely inspired a bunch of people. By the way, not just in taking the assets and making Paragon. People have made videos of completely different topics. They've made games that are completely different, and I really love that aspect. It's kind of like, everyone looks at like Roblox as like the UGC, like you can take these assets and create content. Although Epic didn't have the platform at the time, they allowed people to take their content and make whatever they wanted. So I really have to credit them with kind of giving us that kickstart. I think also we just didn't understand how hard it was to make a game, right? So we saw these assets and then we're like, oh, we'll just go make like a third-person MOBA and it'll be easy, without any understanding of actually how difficult it is to make a game, and then let alone make a game that's live service. So yeah, they definitely kickstarted it, but we also had no idea how difficult it would be going into it.
Talking of the difficulties, did you envision what those risks were going to be from taking a shelved IP and reimagining it?
Not really, because I think the interesting thing that we found with Paragon, and having been like a content creator and very close to Epic Games at the time, we felt like Paragon was just successful. It was successful, but it wasn't Fortnite level success. But then again, there's only one Fortnite on the planet, right? Like there's no game that's as successful as that. And so it was still successful in its own right. So we didn't see it as a risk in terms of, hey, we don't know if this thing is going to work. We know it's going to work if we can execute well enough, because there's already so many people that really love this game. But to your point, like it's still very hard to build it. Just because we know it's going to work doesn't mean that we are the right people that are going to be able to execute and build these things. So it's still a long learning process, and we had to go through a lot of like trial and error to get to where we are today.
Yeah. And you've always hammered home that Omeda and Predecessor is community first development, given what a following Paragon had. What does that really mean day to day in regard to community first development?
Yeah, so we basically speak to our players every single day. When it was early on, as I mentioned, we would stream the development on YouTube and Twitch. So we'd literally have the Unreal Engine open and live stream to our community and be like, oh, what do you guys want to see? And then we just make it. So I think maybe that's become more common, but this is in 2018. So it's like very rare. And so I think people really enjoyed that part of the process, which helped us get to where we are today. And then today, the way we like to develop with our community is, obviously now we can't stream Unreal Engine because it's like proprietary source code, and we have to be a little bit careful. But what we do instead is we run playtests every day with internal testing groups that we're always open to our communities. People can sign up if they want to, and we bring in different skill levels, because it's a MOBA. You have people that are very competitive and you have people that are a bit more casual. So we have different testing groups for different audiences, and we share them features that are coming kind of a month, 2 months, or 3 months out, and gather their feedback. And we're doing this on a daily basis. And then we also have a really great relationship with the content creators that play our game. So we're constantly speaking to them, asking like, what are the things that they think we could improve? What are the ideas that they have? And so I feel like it's a partnership, and we're just constantly learning off each other. There's of course things that they want us to do that we just can't do. And so we're very transparent about, hey, today this thing is not really possible for us because of XYZ reasons, but it's something that we aim to deliver, and they're very understanding. And then on the flip side, there are things that they share with us and we're like, oh, this is a great idea, we'll kind of implement it. I think the perks of being a startup and a smaller studio is that we're able to move very fast. So even though our project is pretty big, like taking on a MOBA is a lot of work.
It's
Because
funny.
yeah, it's definitely not easy, but because we're a very lean team, we're able to be quite agile. And I think we prefer that because we can have a feature that someone suggests and we're like, or like, this is amazing, we'll just put it in the next patch. We don't need to wait for like 6 months.
What do you think that's done with the relationship they've had with the community? Because from my perspective, that community constantly feels heard no matter what the outcome, and they feel a part of something. What does it mean to you from that?
Yeah, I think we have something very special, and we see it a lot in our metrics as well. When we look at like these people are highly engaged in our game, not just the games metrics, but when you look across social media, the engagement we have across places like Discord, our content creators, our Twitch streamers, our community is very highly engaged, and also on Reddit, they're making posts all the time. Some good, some bad, but you want to have all the feedback from as many people as possible so that you can push the product in the right direction. But I would say our community is very, very passionate, and we quite like that. It can be a bit difficult at times if they strongly disagree with something, but ultimately they're the people that love your game. They play it day in, day out. And so sometimes you miss and they'll let you know, which I think is fine. But it doesn't feel good to miss. And I think lately we've just gotten really good at when we first started shipping the game, we had a bunch of ideas. We shipped them and we learned, okay, some of these things work, some of them don't. And our community let us know. And today I feel like maybe this entire year, every single patch we've shipped has been a hit with our community because we've just gotten so much better at understanding. And I think that's what having a really strong core community allows you to do, is like it allows you to refine very quickly as to the direction that you need to go to kind of help your game be more successful.
I love that. They've been with you from the start. And if I look back to when we first met, you were very involved in speaking to the community firsthand. Are you as involved as you were previously?
Yeah, I'm sitting in the playtests every day. If I'm not, if I don't have other meetings, I'm sitting there listening to them, talking to them. I do live streams, so some of our content creators, they'll invite me on and we'll do Twitch live streams together. So I'm super involved. I'm on Reddit every day. The first thing I do is, that sounds sad. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is like I check Reddit, see what people wrote about the game. I check Discord, see what people wrote about the game. And most people might check like a text from their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever it may be. And I'm here on Reddit, like looking at what people say about Predecessor. Like I do that before I go to bed, and then the first thing when I wake up. So I really love it. It's also just a passion of mine as well. And I really feel like the community is, I think I have a special relationship. It's weird, but I feel like the community, like I feel like we all know each other in some way, even though some people I have met and some people I haven't. I feel like we all know each other and our kind of lives are intertwined, if that makes sense. And a lot of people that I met through the community, some of them we've hired, some of them are like really good friends of mine now. And so it's just kind of like this routine that's like, hey, my community's there, check in with them in the morning, speak to them in the evening during play tests, read the Reddit in the evening, and then also get to engage with the content creators on live streams. And everyone's engaged, like we're talking, people asking how their day was. They know things that are going on in my life. I know what's going on in their life. I really like that kind of relationship with our community.
My people. Essentially. Yeah, these are my people. What's it been like from an emotional side to watch people play the game you helped build?
I think it's probably one of the most craziest feelings in the world. Like I went to like a football match one time, and I was like in the stadium, and I was like, the stadium is packed, and I'm like, more people play my game than are in this stadium. And when you put that in perspective, I think I went to watch like Liverpool Arsenal or something, and no, I went to see Tottenham Liverpool when we won like 7-2 or something, and the stadium's packed, although most Spurs fans left halfway through. But
You're speaking to a Spurs fan.
I know, that's why I mentioned it. But the stadium's packed. By the way, it's a beautiful stadium. But the stadium's packed, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, more people play Predecessor than are in this stadium, and not in a way that I feel like arrogant. I'm just like, sometimes you just look at the numbers on a screen because we work in our studio or we work remotely. We don't understand the scale. And so you see games that have hundreds of millions of players and we're still growing. But to look at a stadium and be like, more people are playing Predecessor than are in this stadium really puts it into perspective as to how many people you're actually touching. And so that was like a really like crazy moment for us. And then also when we saw the game on PlayStation for the first time over a year ago now, that's like a crazy moment because you're like, as a kid, you play games and you never even imagined that. It wasn't even a thought in my mind that I could have a game on PlayStation. And then finally, when you and I were at Gamescom, and you watch Gamescom as a kid and you see it on YouTube and you're usually just at home watching it, but then to see something you created at Gamescom, I think is very special. So I think those moments have really impacted me, and I'm very grateful for those moments that people actually take the time to play something we created is a very great feeling.
Because when you're immersed in creating something, you don't see the live realities in front. When you put a comparison of going into a stadium and then having that night at Gamescom and seeing what you've created, it speaks volumes and it hits home. So I can understand your perspective there. What has been the biggest lessons you've learned from this being a passion project to now running a 60, 70 person company?
Yeah, it's a lot of lessons. A lot
One
of lessons.
lesson?
One key lesson. I think one of the key lessons I learned early on was it's all about the people. And everyone tells you this before you start a company. They're like, it's about the talent that you have and the people that you have. But you don't really, I don't think, it's like, when you're a kid and your parents tell you something and you're like, whatever, like, you don't understand it. But then you go through it and you're like, that makes sense now. It's kind of like one of those moments where everyone's like, the people matter. And you kind of understand, like, you need to work with great talent. But when we were very small, it was like, it felt more like we were just friends having fun. And it's still fun, but it just felt like you're working with your best mates. And then as we started to scale, what you realize is that it's not you that's really going to make this thing massive. It's the company and the team, right? The project is so big that everyone on the team has to be firing on all cylinders and as invested as you are into the project because the scope of the game is just so big. And so that was one of the lessons we learned early on was like, we got very lucky because our community are filled with passionate people that also happen to work at game studios. So I had friends that were able to bring in from like Epic Games and other studios because they were very passionate about the game, but they also had a ton of experience. So that was like a lesson for me where because we hired people from the community early on, we were like, these people go above and beyond. But the cool thing about that is when you hire talent from outside your community, which is perfectly fine as well, because there's people that may not have found your game yet, but they applied and they're like, oh, this is a really cool project. I would love to work on that. The people within your team are creating this culture where everyone's very passionate, caring about the game. And then when you hire other people into that, they get bought into that because they see how passionate people are. And I think it's kind of infectious. It's like, if you go to an event and everyone's all happy, you start to feel happy as well, right? There's something in the air. And if you go to an event and everyone's sad, then you feel sad, even though you might not have felt sad at the time, right? And so it's like this infectious atmosphere. And so that's what I learned very early on is we've been very fortunate to hire people from the community and people that are very passionate about our project. And that starts to kind of infect every aspect of the company. And people get even more and more invested in the game. So we have people that when they came in, they were like, I'm not really a gamer, but we needed them to do some like specific role that wasn't really focusing on gameplay. It was maybe like infrastructure or something. But then over time, because everyone else is having so much fun and invested in the game, they start to become invested. And I think that's really important as you build a company, especially as a video game. Like you want people to be invested in your game. So that was one of the lessons I learned early on. It's really about having a really great team, but then also a really great culture.
We were actually going to touch on it a little bit later on as you started speaking about making the right hires. I think bringing people in from the community that were passionate has had a ripple effect on everyone else that's come in because you've got a story and this is built from the community and through passion. So it's had a ripple effect. Who were the first 3 key hires that essentially shaped Omeda's DNA, if we look at it, was it people from the community? Because you've got your co-founding team. Was it the people from community?
Yeah, it was the people from the community, I would say, because early on, we we were just trying to figure out how to make the game. And so what we didn't really know people in the industry at this point. And so our network was basically our community. So other people would approach us and be like, I would love to work on this. I think I would be a good designer or a good engineer. And so we would just bring them on board and start working with them. And I think by divine intervention, fortunately, everyone almost worked out. Like we brought in someone who, one of our designers, Declan, he's phenomenal. He came in and I knew him from Paragon, and he was a competitive player on Paragon. And he came in, he's designed our heroes. He does all the game design. Another person called George as well came from the community. He does all our balancing. And then an engineer, Yoop, that I met through the community as well. He does all our heroes. And like these people had no industry experience, but they learned and now they're crushing it. Like they do a phenomenal job and they're executing at such a high level that I'm like, wow, like how did we get so lucky to find people like that within our community? And so that's those three people have been instrumental to our success, and they're still to this day. They like you, for example, he does all the hero development, like one single person, just because he knows the systems so well. And so I think we got very lucky. So those kind of people have been key hires. But as I mentioned, the cool thing is that because they're so invested and they're so good at what they do, when other people come in or when we're hiring other people and they hear the story, people love those kind of stories, because video games and gamers in general, we all we play video games because we love games, but also the sense of community that it brings. And I mean, you'll know better than me because you're speaking to the candidates, but I would say a lot of the candidates that we have spoken to, they really love that aspect of how we built the company, because they are also looking for not just a job, but also a community, a group of people that are passionate about something that they're building.
And this was one of the key reasons I transitioned into the games industry. It was all led by passion. It was community driven. And having worked in the tech market where it was so transactional, fast paced, speaking to people like we speak to on a daily basis, having done so for 5.5 years, we were like, this is completely different. It's a different world. It's not driven by how much money am I going to make. It's what am I creating? Who are the people I'm creating with, and working towards that goal, all in alignment with each other. And it brings the question, so we've got a good understanding of the sort of people that you brought in that shaped the DNA of the company. Do you feel that as the studio has grown, matured, did the traits you look for in people change over time as well? Because we've brought in people from the community, we know what we're looking for. We're looking for that passionate people that love Paragon, that are going to love Predecessor. What were the traits like? Has that shifted now?
Yeah, I think it's been interesting, and it varies team by team. So someone like you, for example, that I mentioned, who works on our heroes, he's very autonomous. Like he doesn't really need anything from us. We're like, hey, this is the hero we want. And he goes and makes it, figures it out, and gets the job done. But then other people are maybe a little more junior and don't have as much experience. So then we're like, okay, they need a leader. They're like phenomenal at what they do, but they need a lead because this team is like 3-4 people. And so they can't manage that team because they're still relatively new. So then we're looking for a leader, and we work with our team. So today now we have a really nice structure. We have leads, we have seniors. So it's all very well organized. But early on, one of the things we would do is we would go and speak to people. We're like, hey, what do you feel like you need to be successful? Like, is it that you feel like you need a leader? So then we go look for a like game design lead, for example, and that's going to help you succeed, because it's not just when you work on a game, or when you're designing a game, you're not just designing your thing in isolation. You're trying to manage like the business objectives, the roadmap, all these things. And some people, they also don't want to do that. They're like, I really want to go design heroes, for example. So we need a lead that can help manage all the business objectives so that I can really focus on making the best heroes. And so a lot of that was we spent time just figuring out what does our team need to be successful and trying to hire the right people within those roles. And what you want to do is you want to try and find people that have complementary traits. So not necessarily the exact same traits, but traits that would complement each other. Or if there's a certain weakness that someone has, then you can fill the gap by hiring someone that doesn't have that weakness and maybe kind of pick up some of that on the other side. And so we try to do that. We're very open with our team. We involve them in the process as kind of, we like to speak to them, get an understanding of what they feel like is missing versus just me at the top saying, oh, we need this, we need that, we need this. That, in my experience, tends to not work out.
Yeah, because if I remember correctly, there was a stage where we perhaps didn't have those leads into place. And by talking to the team and understanding where those gaps are, more of a layer of, there were individual contributors as principal level coming in that have grown with the company. And we've had some external people come, but we also hired some really great leaders that can then assist that team and allow them to further evolve, which essentially creates a more of a high performance team that's going beyond hard skills.
Yeah, exactly. And we had, we definitely also had an engineer who wanted to be a lead, and then we moved him into the lead role because we're quite big on progressing people's career and helping them improve. And so he was a senior, he progressed to the lead. He didn't really like the lead role because he was just more like, I just want to code all day. I don't want to do with the lead responsibilities, which is perfectly fine. So we moved him over to the principal, and then we found a lead that could really doesn't maybe have to do as much of the programming side because we have this great principal, but can really help lead the rest of the engineers, make sure that they're working effectively, and also help them improve in their profession. And so those are the kind of conversations we like to have. It's like, okay, does our team feel like they lead a need? Does someone want to step into that position? And we ended up hiring for that role. And in most cases, I think we did end up hiring for lead positions because that was what the team agreed. It wasn't something that the company said, hey, we're going to hire over you. It was what we all believed was in the best interest for the company and people's career progression. Because I think the wonderful thing is that our team, they love to learn. And so if we bring someone in that has a ton of experience, is really great at what they do, our team actually, they'll reach out and be like, I'm so grateful that you brought this person in because they're teaching me so much. And so I think that's a wonderful feeling as well. And that makes us feel like, okay, we've hired the right person.
Do you feel that's easier being more of a lean team, a smaller studio? It gives you that flexibility to give people the opportunity to help with that decision of who they need to hire rather than just having that corporate environment where we've got leads, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, 100%. I think I realized it more recently. I can't remember what I was doing, but I was speaking to someone at another company. It was in games. I was trying to buy something, and then I was speaking to them, and the customer service was awful. And I was like, man, if the CEO of this company knew how they were treating someone, he'd be fuming. But the company is so big that he'll never know. And so that was really like in my head, I was thinking, I'm so grateful that our team is lean because any problem, like, is surfaced to me very quickly because we have a lean team and the team trusts that they can surface things to me. So I think that really helps us. Whereas, some companies, they get so big, maybe they have to get that big because whatever reason, but I think they lose a lot of that. And so one thing that I'm really proud of is that anyone on our team, like I speak to everyone on our team because our team is small enough that I can do that. If we had 400 people, it's just not possible. So I really enjoy that. Yeah, it's difficult. And then I think the thing that made us successful is that we had such a close relationship with our community and our team. And so if that's the thing that we believe is our competitive advantage, it'd be a shame to lose that if we just get too big.
Yeah, that's completely understandable. And I thought you'd go on those tracks, and I've seen more and more lean teams, and where a CEO like yourself is very much involved in the trenches, I think there's a better community aspect, and people feel like they can come over to you and discuss absolutely anything, and they're heard.
Yeah.
So yeah, nice conversation there in regards to your team making the right hires. I'm always curious to know, given how much the market has transitioned, you raised over 22 million USD in counting. What were the key lessons raising that amount of money? Because it
Yeah.
was the first time for you, and it's a huge amount for a startup game studio.
Yeah. So it was, yeah, a lot of learnings. It's very, very difficult. When I started, I didn't even know how to make a pitch deck. So it was learning for me. How do you put a pitch deck together? Fortunately, there's a lot of great materials, and actually, GFR Fund, who led our seed round, they put out a blog. I think it was on Medium at the time, or maybe it was on Twitter. They put out how to pitch a games VC. So I just read that, and then I like applied that formula and pitched them, and then they end up leading the seed round. So I was like, oh, the information is out there. You just have to put the time and effort to look for it. And I had pitched other people before, so it's not like I just pitched GFR and got a yes straight away. It was a long process, but what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of resources out there, and it just takes the time to look at it. How are people structuring the deck? What are the things that people are looking for? When I raised, I feel like the market was a little bit easier. Today, it's much more challenging. But I think the key thing that really allowed us to raise capital was we had invested so much time and energy and effort into building the game already and the community that when we were going to pitch people, one of the things that our investors said as to why they gave us capital was that, like, everyone else has a deck, but you have a game. That's the difference. So everyone else has an idea, but we had already built the game. We had spent our evenings, our weekends working on Predecessor, building it with the community in between our day jobs. And so I think that really allowed us to raise capital. Whereas if we just went to them with a pitch deck, they'd probably have passed because they don't know if we can even build a game, right? We had no background, we had no experience. So I think building the game and having a community really helped validate that, oh, there was something here. And then just the amount of people that were really interested in the game. It wasn't a couple hundred, we had, tens of thousands of people.
Yeah. And if you were to give advice for other founders that are now at a similar stage that you were at, given the transition, and we've seen how much harder it is, what is that one piece of advice you'd give to people?
I would say, well, go lean as possible. Yeah, go lean as possible. I think a lot of great games are being made on a lot less money. You see a lot of great indie games, and so I would ask teams to really look: do you really need that much money to create what you're wanting to create? And is there a quicker way to get to market to validate this thing? Because games are very hits driven. There's a lot of, I think someone told me, like, there's 11,000 games released on Steam last year. When you think that's a lot of games, and from there, we probably only know about 20 or 30 that even made it. And from there, there's probably like 5 that really blew up. And so I ask anyone I speak to that asks me, like, hey, how should I go thinking about the next few steps of my company? Should I raise capital? I always say that the key thing is you're here to make a game. So what's the quickest way you can build the greatest game and get to market? Now, you might not be able to finish off the game, but we did early access, and that allowed us to raise even more capital. So I'd say, look at your budget. Can you ship something on a relatively small budget that can really prove that there's something there? Because you don't want to spend 5-10 million of investors' money and then realize that this isn't the game that can get to where you need it to be.
Yeah, and you saying that in regards to how you take that money, how do VC expectations differ from traditional publishing models when you're seeking out that investment? How does that differ?
Yeah, so a VC is going to take equity in your company. So in exchange, they'll give you money. They'll take 10, 20, 30%, whatever you end up negotiating. And a publisher is going to take usually a percentage of the sales, of the revenue. And so, they might say they want 50% of the revenue and then recoup their investment, and then they may adjust the rate. So with an investor, they're really looking for a return on the company when the company exits. The publisher is looking at a return on the game itself. And so what you have to understand is that not every game is going to be right for an investor, and not every game is going to be right for a publisher. So it might have nothing to do with whether they like you or not, but it just might not fit what they're looking for. So I don't want people to feel disheartened. But with a VC, the VC is looking at a return on the company when the company exits. And so when you think about that, typically, I would say traditional box products aren't a fit for VC games, or VC investments, because a VC wants the company to sell And for the company to sell for a nice multiple, they need to have consistent revenue over a period of time. And live service is great for that. That's why we see a lot of mobile studios are venture backed, because they have
Yeah.
consistent revenue over multiple years. So I think if you're developing a live service game, venture can be a really great route. On the publishing side, though, publishers recouping on that specific game, they don't care what you guys do next. They may publish it, but they don't really care. They're like, this game is the thing that we are going to make our investment back. So you can do a box product because they're just going to take a percentage of the sales. So you have to think about what kind of game are you making and what is a fit for the model. Also, it gets a little bit more challenging because VC is looking for large returns, as they should. That's the name of it, the name of the game: high risk, high reward. And so you have to also be realistic with yourself. Is your game capable or operating in a market where it can make high returns? And there's no right or wrong. Some games, you want to make a small game and it's not going to generate, or has the potential to generate hundreds of millions in revenue. There's nothing wrong with that, but it might not fit what the traditional VC model fits, and maybe a publisher is better. So you kind of just have to think about, what is the game you're developing, how big is the market that you're going after, and what's the realistic potential. And then you can identify whether a VC or a publisher is the right route. Or maybe, the alternative is also angel investors. If you don't need that much money, angel investors aren't necessarily looking for massive returns like a VC. I think if you're making a small indie game, you could go to angel investors, and getting a 2-3x return for them is a great outcome, in my opinion. So I think there's a few options.
Yeah, and I think a lot of first-time founders that are just launching now, and we've seen that for the past 12 months, where we've seen multiple layoffs and teams of people getting together and going forward to take venture money. And I think the advice that you've given will go a long way for people in regard to deciding which outcome they want and what is the best possibility for them. If you were to go back, given today's market, would you still raise the same way?
I think so. I think we had to. Our game is very ambitious. That's if I was going to build the same game, I would have to, because MOBAs are notoriously expensive to build. It's a live service game. It lives and dies by its content, and our players, it's a blessing and a curse. Our players burn through our content very quickly, which is great because they're super engaged. But then you got to go produce more content.
They want more.
Yeah, exactly. Which is great. It's a good problem to have, but it does require a lot of capital. So I would probably have to do the same thing. The market is a bit more tough, but I feel like we had at that time a lot of good validation. Obviously today we have even more, but we were in a fortunate position. We had players, we had great metrics, and that really allowed us to raise. And so I think if we hadn't done the work of really building the game before we raised the capital, we would not have been able to raise. But because we had built the game, we had proven it out, we were able to raise large amount of money. I think that's the key kind of thing that I'm trying to get across to people, is have to kind of show something. You have to show that there is something here, that people want this. It can be art. People can Google it, because our alpha playtests are available on YouTube. It's very rough, so it doesn't have to look perfect. But as long as there's something and there's a bit of traction, I think you can raise a small amount of money to really get you to that next level where you're ready to raise a larger round.
I've heard a lot of it in recent times as well. You cannot go with just an idea and a pitch deck. You've got to have a product there. You've got to have something that's playable.
Yep.
And some traction before any VC or publisher is going to give you the time of day. And talking about some of these decisions that you made, I'm sure a lot of them were under pressure in making the right decision for Omeda and for your team. What are the trade-offs, would you say, that you're still wrestling with as a CEO in terms of making hard decisions under pressure?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the hard decisions is more the product side. You want to create the best product possible, and you and your team have an idea, your players have a different idea, or maybe it's the same idea, but there's also just the realities of the business. So early on, one of the things we had to sacrifice was we launched our game on PC in early access. That did extremely well for us, and we're like, oh, this is amazing. But we had to slow down because we had to launch the console version. So our player base, although they stayed with us, were very vocal and frustrated by that because they're playing on the PC version and they were like, nothing is happening in this game. Like, there's no updates. You guys haven't changed anything. And really, really what it was, and this was a learning for us, was although we did tell our community, it's understandable that they were frustrated. They were like, why are you making the console version at the same time as trying to do the live service for the PC version? But our argument was the PC version did extremely well. We believe that there's a really big audience for the console version as well. And also, we were getting tons of signups to the console version. And so then we're like, okay, we need to focus on making the console version, because the other challenge is the further you develop the PC version, the harder it is to bring parity for the crossplay element, right? So then we're like, oh, we're developing both, but the PC is constantly outpacing, so we'll never kind of meet in the middle. And so we had to draw a line in the sand when we launched the PC, did extremely well. We're like, by the way, we now need to pause because we need to go do the console version. And that's just one of the tough decisions that ultimately it worked out extremely well for us because our console version is even more successful than our PC version. But it was a really hard lesson for us because we didn't want to have people coming into Predecessor on the PC version and then just feel like the game wasn't changing, when in reality, the entire company was just trying to get the game onto console. So that was a learning for us. And I think going forward, fortunately now we've developed on all platforms, so we don't have to deal through that. But we've definitely been more open and transparent with our community of like, hey, this is how we're thinking about things. What do you guys think? Taking a lot of those learnings. But that was definitely a tough time for us because people were vocal about their dissatisfaction in the game not changing. And we were trying our best to try to manage both expectations. On one side, you had players like, when is it coming to console? That was the number one thing we would get everywhere. I'd get like private messages. People would message investors like, why isn't the game on console? And then you had other people that play on PC who, rightly so, they don't care about console because they're playing on PC. Like, why is the game not changing? You guys aren't doing anything. So that was a real learning for us. We just didn't expect the game to be as big as it ended up being on PC in early access. And so we kind of had to manage that.
What was the time period that you had of that pause on PC, and what sort of implications did that have for all of your PC users until you got it onto console?
I would say it was about a year or so. It was about a year that it took us to get to console. And then obviously we did the full launch just in August. So it took a long time to finally get to console, but it was about a year. We were fortunate that our PC users, although of course with the lack of content, people naturally churn, but we have a very high revival rate, so people would come back. But our core community kind of stayed. So that was something we were really grateful for. We have a lot of people that have played for more than 2 years of Predecessor that are just playing all the time. So half of those 2 years, there were no updates for really. Like, there was updates, but nothing crazy. And they're still playing Predecessor. So I'm like, wow, well, it's not a small amount of people. This is like hundreds of thousands we're talking about that would just play Predecessor. So I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And people really loved it. And so we're really grateful that people stuck by us. And now when we look back on it, I think people are like, wow, that was the right decision, because yes, they spent a couple years slowing down development on features to get it onto console, but now we're shipping really great features, patch after patch. The game continues to grow. People are really excited, starting to do competitive. And so I think it was a lesson that we had to learn. But now I understand why studios don't release a game for 5 years, because they got to develop all these things and then they want to ship it together. Exactly. Yeah. But when you're a startup, you have to be scrappy. We couldn't afford to not ship the PC version because we didn't know, is the game going to be good enough? And then we developed it on PlayStation and Xbox, and we launch it and no one likes it. But from the PC version, we learned so many lessons that we could take into the console version, that when we launched the console version, it was already fairly successful out of the gate because we had learned from the PC version. So you kind of take a little bit of short-term pain for the long-term gain.
Yeah, it was 12 months of pain. And what's been great for you and the studio is that the community were so passionate about this game. You didn't see a lot of drop-off from your users that are playing the game on a day-to-day basis. Like you said, they've been part of it for years. you spoke about some lessons there. Well, what do you feel is the hardest part of being a founder of a game studio that no one really talks about?
Probably the work-life balance, I think.
You're
Like,
always working.
yeah,
I've never seen
exactly.
you not working.
Yeah, I think look, the job in general is hard. Every job is hard though,
Yeah.
right? So that one is just par for the course. But I think the hardest thing is the work-life balance that maybe people don't speak about enough. Um, and I think it's fine for me because these are my people. So it's great. I enjoy it. Like when I'm not working on Predecessor, I'm on Discord with my friends playing Predecessor. We're talking about like features. Like literally my whole life revolves around it. And by the way, everyone in my life also knows it's about it. So like my friends follow the Instagram page. They're always asking me about updates, like it just people in my personal life. So that's been really great. And my whole life revolves around it. But I think something that I would encourage founders is to have a good work-life balance. And this is like I'm the worst person to preach it because I basically have none. But I'm very fortunate that I'm working on a video game that I love. It's just probably the same for a lot of founders. Like you really love and care for this project, you're working all the time. But what you find is that sometimes if you take a step back, you just grow massively. So you're so like deep in it, you miss things that you wouldn't miss had you taken a little step back and just refresh a little bit. I'm not saying you need to stop working or turn off your phone for like a month, but I think sometimes it's really good to just take 2 or 3 days out. So I've done that in the past where I just take 2 or 3 days out every 6, 12 months. And then when I come back, I just feel sharper, more energized. And I think that's really important. And you kind of miss that if you're just always heads down, you miss things that you wouldn't miss. So I encourage founders to do that. And I encourage my team to do that as well. Like we're always like on top of people like, hey, you guys start time, maybe time to take some holidays, or we have a big milestone up, maybe take the holidays sooner. Or if I just feel like some of my employees haven't taken any holidays, we will encourage them to like, guys, I think you should just take a holiday. It just does wonders. I don't think you realize how maybe burnout or stressed you may be if you don't take time out. And so I think that's really important.
It's very easy. I wouldn't call it a chase, but to get immersed with something that you're so passionate about that you don't think about burnout and you don't think that you're burnout. But unless you put those little structures that you've discussed of having those short breaks of 2, 3 days, they are massive energy boosts. And I've also learned that myself, being a founder of a recruitment business for several years. I wouldn't take holidays. I'd be working on a Saturday, working on
Yeah.
Sunday till God knows what time in the evenings. But then taking that step back, re-energizing, gives so much. I think it puts things into perspective, and fresh ideas will come up, and you come back in bigger and
Yeah.
better straight away.
Yeah.
So
We're
that's
in a creative industry as well, right? So that's the other thing. Is like, I think if you ask a musician to sit in the studio for a year on end, eventually they don't have no many ideas. They're just staring at the same walls. But some really great music, when you listen to artists, they're like experiences that they had that then they write about, right? Like it could be like a love story or somewhere they traveled or something that happened in their
a
actual
walk.
life.
It
Yeah,
could be a walk down the road
exactly.
in a park.
But you just get inspired by different things. I think if you're just stuck in the same environment over and over again, you can lose some of that creativity. And given that we are in a creative industry, sometimes it is important to take a step back and think about what else is out there, have a look at other things, travel, and then what are the things that you learn on that journey that maybe you can apply to the game. And I think it just unlocks a bit more creativity, and you start to lose that when you're just always in the trenches every day.
And I think people are becoming more self-aware of that now and looking after themselves a little bit more. We preach it, but then we get caught up in it from time to time. But it's good that you put a structure in there. And I think there's valuable lessons in that that other founders could take away from that. So, Omeda, road ahead for you guys. You've got one game. It's a live services game.
Yep.
What is the road ahead for you now?
Just continue to grow Predecessor. Fortunately, it's been growing, and I think we've got into a really good groove of like what are the things that we've learned from the mistakes. Like, yeah, as I mentioned, one of the console ones. what are the mistakes we made, or what are the lessons that we've learned along the journey. And I think today we've got into this really good rhythm of like, okay, we know what our players want, we know what we need to deliver, so it's kind of just going through the motions. And so that's really been our focus. We also really want to innovate on the MOBA genre. So I think the third person aspect is very unique, but there's much more we can do. Now that the game is third person, it opens a lot of the design space. So we have some really great innovations that they've kind of never been done in a MOBA coming in September that we're really excited about. So we're constantly just looking at how can we push the boundaries of this game, because we feel like there's a lot of unexplored space still. So Predecessor is kind of our main focus. And then something that's been really cool to see is our community have been doing esports. So we're starting to look at that a little bit more. They put up crazy money. They put up $35,000 for a tournament in August, and they're all meeting up. My co-founder's going to it. It's in Kansas City in the United States. And that's like done by our community, which is crazy. Like that's a lot of money.
It is.
And 10 teams are flying out. They're all going to be competing in person. And so we're like, oh, wow, there's something really special about that. You don't really see that often. So we're trying to lean into those things as well. So yeah, constantly pushing the game forward, and then looking at how we as a company can support our community with esports, given it's a MOBA. People love to be competitive. So all that to say, this is our kind of main focus at the moment.
So esports is a big genre and a topic that you would be focused on. Is this the first esports tournament that you're holding for Predecessor?
So this is, no, we've done a few before, but this is the first in-person one. And we're not even hosting it, by the way. Our community are doing it. So like they're hosting it themselves. But we thought my co-founders and some of my team, some of my game design team, they also qualified in the tournament. So they're like qualified. So they have a team. So they're going to the event. And then my co-founder is going as well because he's based in Canada. So it's a quick trip. But we thought it'd be a cool moment. So also going to send some merch there, meet people, and just speak to them kind of face to face and learn a bit more about the game. Unfortunately, it's during Gamescom, so I'm at Gamescom. Otherwise, I would go. But I think that's been really cool. And then even before that, they've put up $10,000, $20,000 per tournament, and they've been doing it online. And I think it got to the point where like they've been hosting so many tournaments online, like they've done like 10, 12 tournaments. And then there's all these other people that are also hosting their own tournaments. There's massive tournaments in the Middle East. We have a
huge over there.
Yeah, we have a big Saudi Arabic community. They're hosting their own tournaments, which is we didn't even know about like a year ago, but it's really started to grow. I think it's about third biggest country. So there's a lot of players there. They're hosting their own esports. So we're looking at how can we help them? What tournaments can we help provide? Are there tools we can provide? So it's been really exciting to see our community do it. And now we're also starting to get a little bit involved as well.
And then hosting your
sponsoring
your own
exactly.
Well, that's great. So as we wrap up, this has been super insightful. You've given a lot of lessons that you've learned, how the business has evolved, how community driven it has been. Last question from me. One belief that you've completely changed your mind on since founding the business?
Oh, wow. I thought making games was easy, but it's definitely way harder than I thought. That's definitely one belief. Because, as a content creator, I would always be like, oh my God, what are these developers doing, man? Come on, it can't be that difficult. And now I'm doing it. I'm like, God damn, it's difficult. So that's definitely the biggest belief. And I think I just, I was very young when I was playing video games when I started. And I was like, man, it can't be that hard. Like some of these, but then you make a game and you realize there's so many trade-offs. There's difficult decisions that have to be made, whether it's on the business side or the game design side. And so I just have a newfound level of respect for game developers. Is way harder than I thought it was being a content creator. I just didn't realize how difficult it was. So that's probably something that I've done a complete 180 on.
Yeah, there's so many hidden costs emotionally, financially, and everything in between, and the amount of work that goes into it. We just jump onto a game and play it.
Exactly, yeah.
Great. Why is it not great? But the amount of work and graft that goes into it is unbelievable. And unless you see that firsthand, like you have done for the past 5 years, I think it's very easy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, look, it's been great having you here, and enjoyed every moment. So a massive thank you to you. Lots of lessons that will come out from this. So yeah, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Pleasure.